guys, what's up? Welcome back to our channel. A lot of you know that we went to Seoul, South Korea recently. We went there for a week. It was our first trip there. We celebrated New Year's there and really had the best time. It was such a good trip. After we got back, on my Instagram handle, I posted a question sticker where I told everyone if they have any questions about planning a trip to Seoul, South Korea, then to leave their questions there. And I mentioned that I'll make a video about it on YouTube. This is that video. I did get a lot of questions, but a lot of questions were similar. I will answer those questions and I will also share our experience of traveling there for the first time, and whatever little tips I can think of, I will give you those as well. I'm gonna start from the beginning. I did get a lot of questions about how we planned our trip, how did we get our visa. We'd been wanting to go there for past 2 years, but we kept delaying it because both of us, since we got married, have only traveled to countries where there was visa on arrival. We had never really tried to apply for a visa where you sent in documents for review and then wait. For our December trip, we started doing our research in the beginning of November, and to get South Korean visa, you have to get in touch with government authorized agencies. In South Korean embassy's website, we did find a list of agents in Mumbai and we got in touch with Hana Travels. Now we chose Hana Travels because they were the ones who were recommended by most of the YouTubers. We got in touch with them. They sent us an email with a list of documents. So there are a lot of documents which you need to attach. The first thing that we did was book our tickets, and those were confirmed refundable tickets. Later the agent told us that you could have shown dummy tickets as well. I have no idea how to book dummy tickets, but when you plan your trip, just have a word with the agent and ask them if you can book dummy tickets and show them. The next thing that we did was hotel booking. So we booked our hotel through booking.com. We chose that option of pay at property. When you go to booking.com, you can put a filter to show you only the options where you don't have to give an advance. I already knew which hotel we were going to go for because I had done this research like 1 year ago. Fortunately, we did not have to pay anything for that hotel booking. It got confirmed within few minutes and we got that document in our hand. Now they also asked for bank statements. I asked the agent how much bank balance do we need to show, and the agent told us that these embassies don't say anything explicitly, but we recommend that you have a consistent balance of 1 lakh rupees in your account. The bank statement has to be latest. You have to get it sealed and signed from your bank's branch itself. There's another option where a family member can sponsor you. So if you don't have that kind of balance in your account, your family member can provide a letter where they can mention that they will sponsor your entire trip and they will pay for everything. You also have to write a cover letter. The agency did send a sample of that cover letter in the email. In the cover letter, you basically have to mention what you do, for how many days you're going, and you also have to mention your day-to-day itinerary. For that, I would recommend that you make a rough itinerary and send in. It's not that you have to follow that itinerary to a T, but it's just to give them an idea of all the places that you're going to visit. Apart from all the documents which were there in the list, we also provided some extra documents to make our case stronger. We actually took a printout of the first page of all our social media handles and attached that. This was the first extra document. The second one was our marriage certificate because I have not officially changed my name. And the third extra document was a statement of all our investments. Now there are 2 options that you get when you're applying for a visa. One is a normal visa where you get to know if you've gotten the visa in 10 to 12 working days, and one is an express visa where you get to know within 5 to 6 working days. We applied for the express one even though the agent told us that you can go for the normal one, you have time. We had time, but we did not have the patience to wait for their answer, and especially because we were applying for a visa like this for the first time, we just wanted to know as soon as possible. On the whole, we paid about 15,000 for both of our visas, but the fee can vary. I had checked 1 year ago, it was cheaper. Now it is a little more expensive. I am not sure by the time you're watching this video how much the fee is going to be. You can check the latest fees with the agency itself. So on Monday, we submitted all our papers, and the next Monday, we received our passport with the visa. Now, you don't get a stamp or anything in your passport. You actually get a physical copy of the visa, which you can keep with you when you're traveling. This was everything about how we got our visas. I hope that I have not missed anything. If I have, then let me know in the comment section below. I'll try to, help you out there. Now coming to the expenses, and I'm not going to add shopping in this right now. For our flights, the first ticket that we booked was a refundable one. We booked Air India. Our flight was via Delhi, and this cost us about 1,26,000. We did not even pay for our seats or anything for this ticket. This was a ticket that we attached in our visa application. Now, even Even refundable tickets do have cancellation charges, but they are the least as compared to the other tickets. Once our visa was approved, we actually cancelled this ticket, got our refund. Out of 1,26,000, we got 1,20,000 back, and then we booked a non-refundable ticket, which was for 1,03,000. And in this ticket, we also paid for our preferred seats. The flight and the timing and everything was the same. We only switched from refundable to non-refundable tickets and saved about 15,000 there. The next and actually the biggest expense was our hotel. We chose Aloft in Myeongdong. We did our booking from booking.com. Aloft is a Marriott Bonvoy hotel, and we paid about 1,71,000 for 7 nights of stay. There are of course a lot of cheaper options there as well. You can really go through the list of hotels, check the photos and reviews and everything, and choose the one which you like. I personally am quite particular about the hotels that we stay in. That's why we chose this one. I like this one the best. There are definitely many other good and cheaper options available. I've covered our major expense, which was hotel, flight and visa, which was close to 3 lakhs. Somebody did ask us to suggest areas to stay in apart from Myeongdong. Now, the reason why a lot of people choose to stay in Myeongdong is because it really is centrally located. If you want to go to Namsan Tower, or if you want to go to the palace, or if you want to go anywhere for that matter, it is super centrally located. Every place is like at a close distance. In fact, when we went to Namsan Tower, we actually walked back. It was that close to our hotel. Still, if you don't want to stay in a touristy spot like Myeongdong, then choose any hotel which is closer to the station. Public transport is top notch in Korea. In our 7 days of trip, only twice we took taxis. Otherwise, we were only taking the buses and the trains, and mostly the trains, the metro. So any hotel in any area which is close to a metro station is good. Now, on top of the 3 lakhs that we spent on hotel, flight and visa, we spent about 2 lakhs more on our trip. So our total trip cost was about 5 lakhs. Now, South Korea is expensive, definitely more expensive than India. On an average, just on food and transport, we were spending about 5 to 6,000 rupees, and we only took public transport. Only twice we took taxis, as I told you. If you plan to take only taxis, then it's going to cost you a lot more. Even for a short distance, taxis cost about 10 to 12 $12, which is like 850 or 900 rupees. Because we were doing a winter trip, we also had to spend quite a bit of money on winter clothes because we did not have like proper winter clothes. South Korea can be quite cold in December. The temperature was anywhere between 1 degrees to -4, -5 degrees. So we had to buy those jackets from Uniqlo, which were like 10,000 each. We had to get mufflers and socks and all of those things we had to buy in advance. That was a big expense for us as well. One thing that you should definitely buy before going to South Korea is a good pair of walking shoes. After doing a lot of research, both of us got these walking shoes from New Balance, which were a savior during our trip. On an average, we were walking minimum 20,000 steps. That's like 10 to 12 kilometers a day. You have to really walk a lot there. Even if you're taking taxis just to explore the areas and stuff, you will have to walk a lot. So a good pair of walking shoes is like a must-have before you're traveling there. On shopping, on the whole, we spent about 1 lakh there in South Korea. My maximum expense was in Olive Young, and the rest we spent on other things. Like we got some really cool custom Nike sweatshirts. We also got custom New Era caps. So those things were also a little expensive. I'm also including the hair spa and color analysis in this expense itself, because the Korean hair spa cost us about 18,000 rupees for 2 people. It was very expensive. Very cool experience, but very expensive. And the color analysis, I believe for the both of us, we paid about 14,000 rupees. This was a rough breakdown of expenses of our entire trip. When it comes to our itinerary, we actually did not have a fixed itinerary, and we only made a list of places that we wanted to cover and tried to cover everything in 1 week, although we were not able to. The only thing that we missed in our list was that palace where people wear hanboks. I did not want to wear a hanbok, but I did want to visit that palace. That we missed because we really underestimated how much we'll have to walk in each and every area. Although Myeongdong is centrally located, and on an average it took us about half an hour to reach any tiny area, still different areas in Seoul are huge. So once you start walking and exploring, you will not stop and you will not even realize where the time has gone. You also have to keep in mind that things start getting quieter after 8 p.m. in Seoul. The last order in restaurants is 10 p.m. and most of the shops shut at 9 p.m. So majorly you only get morning and afternoon to do anything that you want to do. It is not possible to cover 3 or 4 different things in one particular day. The max that you can do is 2. Some of the places that I would recommend that you go are, one is Namsan Tower. That experience is fantastic. Then definitely explore Hongdae. It's a university area, a lot of young crowd, great shopping and beautiful cafes there. Then of course Gangnam, that's like an upscale neighborhood. You can go to COEX Mall, see the Starfield Library, have a walk around Gangnam. We also went to Suwon, which is 1.5 hours away from Seoul. Now, a lot of people don't go to Suwon. My main reason to keep Suwon in our itinerary was because one of my favorite K-dramas of 2024 was shot there. It's called Lovely Runner, by the way. The main lead's house is actually a cafe, and it's a beautiful and cozy cafe. Even if you don't watch K-dramas, you can still consider going to Suwon for the Starfield Library there. So there's one Starfield Library in Gangnam and there's one in Suwon. We went to both of them, and to be very honest, I like the Suwon one better. If you love shopping and you love skincare and makeup, then you cannot miss Songsu. Songsu is an area where a lot of interesting pop-ups happened. I went to the Tir pop-up over there. It also has the biggest olive young in all of South Korea. You'll also find some beautiful cafes there, and it's just a very interesting area to explore because, you know, the kind of buildings and the kind of stores which are there are just gorgeous. They are just so beautiful. You can also consider exploring Dongdaemun Design Plaza. We spent New Year's Eve there. There was a light show and there was a countdown and everything. It was beautiful. The architecture itself is amazing. There's also a beautiful stream near Dongdaemun Design Plaza where you can take a stroll. These are some of the places that you can consider exploring whenever you're planning to go there. I've covered the visa process, the expenses and the itinerary. Now comes one of the most asked questions about vegetarian food. It is very difficult. I'll be super honest with you, it is extremely tough. I only carried some theplas which I would sometimes eat for dinner or in the morning before leaving the hotel. But finding vegetarian options when you're on the go is so tough. I survived on cafe food. Even in cafe food, it's not that you have a lot of variety. You can just have like desserts and butter croissants and things like that. In Myeongdong, you do have like 2-3 vegetarian options in street food. A lot of times that was my dinner. Even in convenience stores for that matter. We went to a convenience store where there was a ramen library and there wasn't a single vegetarian ramen over there. When we went to the convenience store, I actually ate bananas. That was the first time in my life that I actively chose bananas for dinner. If you're a vegetarian, I would recommend doing your research in advance. Look up for vegan restaurants. I did not do that research. I really underestimated how much of an issue this would be. The thing is, it's not that there are no vegan restaurants there. There are a lot of vegan restaurants that have opened up, but you definitely have to look for them actively, then spend the time to go there, eat, and then come back and then carry on with your day. It did require a lot of time and planning. If you're very particular, then you should do your research in advance, and whatever area that you're going in, find a vegan option there and, you know, just go there and eat. If not, then be prepared to survive on desserts and cafe food, at least for lunch, and carry your own food for dinner. Oh, there is one more suggestion, guys. If you can find an Indian restaurant near your hotel, like if you don't want to carry a lot of food, try and find an Indian restaurant near your hotel. Then maybe you can stick to one place for your dinner. Majorly, the questions were about all the things that I have covered so far. Now I'll quickly cover some more questions. Someone asked, did you have to learn at least the basics of Korean language or will English work? There's definitely a bit of language barrier there. Not everywhere you'll find people who understand English. So the best thing to do is to download this app called Papago. If you want to ask someone something, you can just type it out. It will translate it in Korean and then you can show that to that person. You know, Koreans are so patient. They will wait for you to, you know, type the whole thing and then read the translation and then try to help you out. In fact, a lot of Koreans have their own app installed in their phones where they can translate Korean to English. The photographer that we had hired was Korean. He did not understand English at all, and we did like a 3-hour-long shoot with him and we were only talking via our apps. Another app which you must download when you're going there is Naver Maps. Google Maps do not work properly there. It is super efficient. It tells you which train you have to get on, which bus you have to get on, and it covers the entire route with you. It starts sending messages when it's time for you to get down from a train or a bus. It's very efficient and makes your life very easy when you go there. Someone asked how many months prior does one need to book flight tickets to save some extra money. I'm not the best person to answer this because we literally plan all our trips at the end moment. This trip was also planned a month and a half in advance. Having said that, after getting this question, I did check the ticket prices for the month of October for Seoul. It was about the same as what we paid. If any of you have experienced something different or have an extra tip, then please leave it in the comment section. Is it safe for a woman to travel alone? Did you visit Busan and Jeju? We did not go to Busan and Jeju, and I do think that it is absolutely safe for solo travelers. Not even once in our 7-day trip we felt unsafe or scared while walking in a secluded area or walking late in the night. Most of the areas in the city shut down by 10. There were a lot of times when we took a walk around Myeongdong at like 11 in the night or went to a convenience store at like 1 in the night. The streets were very empty, but it still felt safe. Please mention, did you hire an agent there or you went by yourself? We went by ourselves. Before we booked everything, we actually looked at tour packages, and initially we were not planning to go there for a week. Our plan was to go there for 4 nights. A 4-night tour package with flights and with a very mediocre hotel with 1 or 2 activities thrown in was costing us 2.5 lakh per person. Our trip did eventually cost us that much, but with a lot of shopping, with an excellent hotel and good flights and everything. I would really recommend doing it on your own and planning everything on your own. It is very, very easy booking hotels, booking a flight, and even exploring the city. It's super easy. Now, someone asked the currency and the cards, what are the things needed to be done? When it comes to currency, you definitely need some cash on you because street food, street markets and all, they only accept cash. Even if you make a transport card and you want to top it up, at any convenience store, you will have to pay for it in cash. The best thing would be to carry some dollars and get it exchanged as per your need there itself. When it comes to cards, definitely check with your bank how much of a transaction fee they charge on every transaction. Especially, there is a fee called currency conversion fee, which is charged on each and every transaction that you do by a card. I did get a Forex card from my bank and they told me there are no transaction charges. I filled it up with dollars because there was no option of filling it up with South Korean won. I was swiping it like crazy for the first 2-3 days, and then in my statement I saw that on every single transaction there was a 3.5% charge of currency conversion. I was also carrying my credit card and I checked and saw that even on my credit card the charge is the same. Definitely check with your bank how much of a currency conversion fee they charge on every transaction so that you at least have an idea of how much extra you have to pay. I'm pretty sure there are certain cards where the fees is much lower than what I paid for every transaction, but still check with your bank. Okay, last and final question, is South Korea xenophobic? I don't have a single negative experience to share with you. We had such a brilliant time there. They like to keep to themselves. They're very quiet, very, very respectful. Whenever anyone spoke to us, they spoke to us with a lot of respect, and they're very poised and respectful. 3 times we needed help. Once when we were coming back from Namsan Tower, we kind of got lost and we were in one of those residential streets. We had no idea where to go. There was a girl who was walking by. We quickly typed in our Papago app, like we are trying to find this metro station, how do we get there? And she just told us to follow her. We followed her for good 10-15 minutes. She kind of brought us to a spot from where the metro station was just like stone throw away. The next time when we wanted to go to Starfield Library in Suwon, we got on the wrong bus. Naver Maps was not tracking it. We just got confused where this bus was going. So we asked one of the guys in the bus. He as well told us that, okay, you should get down here. Then he told us to follow him and he dropped us off at the correct bus stop. Like, he did not have to do that. He could have just ignored us, but he did that. And the third time we were at a metro station and we could not figure out which train we had to take. So we asked one of the guys there who was just passing by and minding his own business. That person did not know English at all, but he stood there with us for good 10 to 15 minutes just to help us out. He did not even have that app on their phone where he could translate Korean into English. He was just trying to figure it out with us, Again, he did not have to do that. So we have had such a positive experience in South Korea. We love the city, we love the vibe, we love the people. and we cannot wait to go back there again. It is seriously one of those cities which we feel that we would want to go again and again. So anyway guys, on that note, I'm gonna end this video right here. After a long time I have talked this much. If you have any other question, please leave a comment in the comment section below. I will try and help you out over there. I've already posted part 1 of my Korea shopping haul, and the second part will come next very soon. Thank you so much for watching guys. I really hope that this video was helpful, and I'm gonna see you soon again. Bye. Mwah.